I'm Chanda Williams, as said before, with the Financial Accountability section in the Financial Compliance area at TEA. We handle the Student Attendance Accounting Handbook, your Financial Integrity Rating System indicators and results, also charter applications, and any technical assistance that may derive from anything with accounting, funding, and attendance. As you know, TEA has many acronyms that we throw out, so I'll make sure in our presentation, if there is one, to clarify what that is. Are there a lot, not to put anybody on the spot, but a lot of new people to CTE? Okay, so I'll try to, this is a pretty broad, high-level presentation on the SAW. The SAW, which is the Student Attendance Accounting Handbook, is a handbook that's adopted yearly. Right now we have the proposed version out on our website, and it should be finalized by the end of this month. Usually we try to get it out before school starts, but because of the 84th legislative session, last legislative session, we've been behind. So hopefully we can get it out to you guys, the final version. The proposed is out right now. Basically what the SAW is, it's a guide that governs all the accounting attendance rules that school districts and charter schools must follow to generate funding for their school, or for their district or charter school. So it's 13 sections. I'll talk about section 1, 2, 3, and 5 today that are more applicable for what you need, for what you do in your area. If you ever want to cure insomnia, read this. It definitely, you'll fall asleep real quick. It is important to read because since we do adopt it yearly, we only really post the significant changes that's in section 1, 1.7. So if you already have become familiar with it, gotten your feet, for the newbies, gotten your feet under you and kind of familiar, you would just go to the significant changes that occur each year so you don't have to worry about rereading the SAW again. So the section 2 is your audit requirements, and there you have all the requirements that you would need to be able to pass your audit with flying colors. You can have an on-site audit or a desk audit. Currently, the audit team, the auditors are in, I believe, looking at 2014, 2015 data. So as the first bullet indicates, you need to have your retention schedule of 5 years for all attendance and documentation. You have 20 working days of any request from TEA to get to prove the documentation and get it to us, whether it's desk or on site if you don't have it readily available. If you do not, the problem with that is that TEA can ask for 100% of that funding back that's in question, that's not documented. So if you're a large district or you have a lot of students, that can equate into a lot of money. So at the end of the day, you want to document, and retain it for 5 years at least. Like I said, I think they're on 2014-15 now, finishing that school year. I think they've sent out the information for the people that will be eligible for the attendance audit for 15-16, I think last week. So just make sure you have your documentation. Section 2 align what you need for your requirements for that. The reports that they definitely will ask for that's important to touch upon are your student detail, your campus summary, your district summary, and any reconciliation between the teacher roster and your attendance records. So you want to make sure you have those. They should be able to come out of your student attendance accounting software system, depending on if you submit it campus level to your administrative offices, and then the auditors will take it from there. You just want to make sure that you have as much accurate documentation as possible. If it's something that's illegible, or something that a reasonable person cannot ascertain what it's saying, then that money will be questioned. So just make sure you try to keep as clean documentation as possible. Okay. Section 3 is a large section in the SAW. It talks about your general attendance that you will need to have. It's probably the largest section in the SAW. We have 13 sections in the SAW with a glossary and an index, and we every year go through the adoption process like I talked about, and the separate sections in TEA, like the CTE division here, who always submits it on time and so graciously, love y'all, submit the updates for us to update the SAW to be able to have a good handbook for you guys to have for the rules and regulations. So in section 3, it talks about your eligibility for funding. I'm sure most of y'all have heard of the 2 to 4 hour rule. You have to offer at least 2 hours or 120 minutes of instruction to receive half-day funding, and 4 hours and 240 minutes to receive full-day funding. It talks about your enrollment and withdrawal procedures in Section 3 for your student population, the attendance taking rules, your snapshot time, the official snapshot time, any alternate attendance times that you may have that your board has approved, It also has your calendar. As I mentioned before with the 84th legislative session, I'm sure Bryce may have touched on it, the language was struck from the rule that you had to go 180 days. Currently now you're at 75,600 minutes. There is a song on YouTube that a district did to, I think, the Rent song for 75,000. Go check it out. It's fun. It made our work a little more fun when we had to deal with this because it's a very daunting change that they made. But essentially 75,600 minutes. There's two rules that are in attendance. The first rule is that a school operational day has to be 7 hours. The second part is you have to go 180 days. That's been struck. All it is now is saying that the 420 minutes, which is 7 hours, times 180 days is now 75,600 minutes. So essentially, if you had your 180-day calendar and you never changed it, you still kept with your 180-day with the approved waivers on file, you should reach your 75,600 and no problem. Where you get into an issue with this for funding is if you're at the end of your school year calendar, which cannot be before May 15th, if you do not reach 75,600 minutes, that is where your funding will be reduced proportionately. So whatever the percentage is, say you only go 75,000 for the year, whatever that percentage point is, which is not a lot for those 600 minutes that you did not meet, your funding, your ADA will be reduced by that. So it's important that you reach that. It's had a lot of ramifications. I think when the bill was first introduced, they didn't realize how it would affect the special populations and programs that TEA has and the districts have. So just make sure your calendar has a 75/6. That now includes recess, intermissions, and in-class breakfasts. So you can pretty much include anything as long as from the first bell to the last bell to get to your 75/6. You need to make sure there's enough minutes built into the calendar for at least 840 minutes. That's 2 days for any calamities, bad weather, health or safety concern. Just a good practice to do. Also, in general attendance, it talks about the compulsory age, which students are mandated to go to school between the ages of 6 and 19. Ages 21 and 25 may be admitted. There's a section of requirements that they have to be eligible for. If they want to receive their high school diploma but already have their GED, then they're eligible to enroll with certain requirements in that section. The things that are ineligible for attendance that will not generate any funding is study hall and signing in. So it's just a brief synopsis of what Section 3 is. Like I said, it's very involved. I try to do a high level. I get, between Yolanda Walker and myself, we probably get almost 30 calls a day in regards to the SAW. We think that with it being 300 pages, we've covered every scenario. Not true. We still get questions because there's a lot of gray area or things that people may misinterpret or that they interpret differently, but it could be correctly. So if you have any questions with attendance, my number and information and email are at the back, so I'll be able to help you with that and anything with the funding component. So that's just some light reading for y'all to do later. I mean, not that you're overwhelmed now or anything. So let's get to Section 5, which is applicable to you guys for CTE. The first section is your CTE Contact Hour funding criteria. They must be a qualified certified teacher. The exceptions to that are your charter schools and your District of Innovations. Also, dual credit if they attend like a post-secondary college or campus or adjunct faculty or professors teaching them. Obviously, they don't have to have that designation. Also, exception 3, if you hire a substitute that is not qualified certified for your main CTE teacher, then it's allowed for 30 days to be able to still get the funding for that. You must document your average minutes per day. You must have the appropriate resources, labs, materials that align with the TEKS and all the curriculum standards. And you must provide at least one coherent program with 3 career clusters. In the SAW, and I think y'all were talking about that drilled down to the PEAMS level, which is a lot more involved than what I do. There's a link that has the information for the coherent programs and the career clusters as well. So this presentation should be provided to you guys, all the links. I did check before I left the office yesterday. They did work yesterday. Hopefully they work today if you need it, but if not, call me and we can get you in the right direction. Funding eligibility grade levels. So you know your grades 9 through 12 are eligible for CTE Contact Hours. 7th and 8th graders are eligible if they are disabled, which is the CTED, which we'll get into a little later. For your funding eligibility courses, the TEA, must be approved CTE courses. The innovative courses, you must maintain the documentation of local board approval to offer any TEA approved innovative course. For your CTE allotment expenditures, you have to expend at least 42% to your indirect costs. And in my notes, I had what functions you could code that to get to your indirect costs. So when you have the PowerPoint, when you pull up, you should be able to pull up my notes, and it has the different functions that you can use to get towards that. Your district may place a student in disciplinary setting for up to 5 consecutive days and claim CTE, bless you, claim CTE contact hours even if no services were provided. 30 days with a substitute or no services does not apply in this particular setting. So if you have a student that needs to be put into a disciplinary setting, you can still generate funding even if you don't provide CTE services for that student while they're in that setting. Earning CTE contact hours. There's a 6-hour daily limit for funding purposes. You're only getting, that's the maximum that you'll be funded on when you receive your weighted funding from the state. There's no partial attendance, no 1-hour attendance for a 2-hour course, and no 1 or 2 hours in a 3-hour course. Auditing CTE courses does not count as contact time either, so please do not use that. For special ed, pregnancy-related services, and other certain demographics of students, you have to offer the same amount and type of CTE service as before placement. So if you have a student that is now going to be coded as a PRS, a pregnancy-related service student, you still must offer the CTE service in the same amount of type before she was placed with that code. And there's more information in the SAW about the different settings that apply to this. Here's your chart for determining your V code for each CTE course. Each CTE course must be reviewed separately to determine the average minutes per day that the students attend that course. 3 contact hours is the maximum your district may claim for a single course. So for any minutes 45 to 89, that's a V1. 90 to 149, that's a V2. 150 to 180 plus minutes, that's a V3. If you have a student that is taking 3 45-minute classes, that's V1 plus V1 plus V1 equals the V3, they would be coded a V3. Here is the contact multiplier for each V code. Essentially, V1 is 1 contact hour, V2 is 2, all the way down to the maximum of 6. So you can use that when we're determining. I have a slide that has an example at the end of the presentation where we use this information. For your CTE career prep requirements, for the paid work-based instruction, it must include the classroom instruction. It lasts the entire year, age 16 or older, average 1 hour per day for classroom instruction. You average 10 hours of work weekly, which is 2 credits, V2. Average 15 hours of work weekly, 3 credits, it's a V3. And eligible for contact hours if unemployed greater than the 15 consecutive days. For the practicum requirements, the practicum courses and other 2 or 3 credit CTE courses can be used as lab-based, paid or unpaid, for the work-based learning experiences. The training must be appropriate to the classroom instruction and that particular coherent sequence. For paid practicum requirements, say that fast 5 times. Paid practicum requirements, work-based learning, training, and classroom instruction must be provided. Age 16 or older, you must have valid work documentation like a Social Security card on file for those students. Average 1 hour per day for every school week of classroom instruction. For your problems and solutions, you must have a cooperative between the teacher and the student. It's a classroom instruction plus 1 supervised research. For claiming contact hours, your district may count a student in problems and solutions course for contact hours on the first day of enrollment if the project plan is written within 15 days of enrollment. If the project plan is not written within 15 days, your district may count the student contact hours beginning only on the first day when the project plan is actually written. The instructor and student must meet at least weekly. You must project progress evaluations that are required for each grading period as well. And there's further information in Section 5 of the SAW that has more detailed information. It's just kind of a high, broad level overview. CTE for the disabled, we call it CTED. Grades 7 through 12, you must have approval from your ARD, bless you, Admission, Review, and Dismissal Committee. It must be a self-contained classroom. It must be special ed students only. For your contracted instruction, your home district reports the attendance. The receiving district reports attendance to the home district. If the student is absent all day, if the student is absent at the official attendance taking time. Your contracted instruction can be with the district, college, another district, another college, another entity. You just make sure that you have your contract on file in case of any audit that they may ask for the documentation for that. For dual credit, it can count for CTE contact hours. You need the documentation of agreement with the college. Usually it's MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. It must meet other dual credit requirements. That's in section 11.3.1 of the SAW. You can also look at 19 TAC, subchapter D and subchapter C in chapter 4 and 74 in regards to other requirements for dual credit. Ooh, the fun part, CTE and state funding. So the Office of School Finance, where Robin, she's here too, Robin Aldridge, she works with me in school in financial accountability. But the way the Office of School Finance is, we have state funding and then we have financial compliance. For the SAW and the first ratings that we handle, we're under financial compliance with the audit side, and then state funding is a different side, even though we do a lot of stuff together. Obviously, attendance drives most of your state funding, so we kind of have to be well-versed in both. If it is something that is a particular question about your adjusted allotment or your ADA, if you have a question for me, I'll have to get that to state funding, but I definitely will get you an answer. But for these purposes, for today, we'll talk about the state funding that has to do with CTE. There's two different formulas that you would use to be able to determine what your district or charter school will receive for your CTE funding. The first one is you're going to receive a $50 flat fee for each CTE full-time equivalent that's either enrolled in 2 or more advanced CTE courses for 3 or more credits, or an advanced CTE course as part of a tech prep program. So that's one formula. That's not a lot of money that's generated necessarily from that. I'll show you an example. The main money obviously comes from your actual contact hours. So for your CTE state funding weight, it's basically you're receiving, the weighted funding is 35% more than a regular student. And FTE is defined as 30 hours of contact a week, or 1,080 hours of contact a year between a student and a CTE program. So if you look at the table, you have your student CTE code, the V codes that we talked about earlier, times the contact hour multiplier, the number of contact hours per day. For funding purposes, they're still going to be using days. There's no way right now that I know of, unless something's going to be coming down later, that we'll be able to ever drill down to the minutes for funding. So we're still using the synopsis of how many days you actually go to receive your funding. It's still days present over days taught to get your actual ADA. For all of my examples and tables here, we're going to assume perfect attendance. Okay, so then the next section is your number of contact hours per 180 days, and then this will spit out what your FTE or portion of FTE is. So, and this is kind of a busy slide, but we'll walk through it. So you have ABC Independent School District that has 75 students that are coded to V1, 21 students coded to V2, 18 students coded to V3, and 5 students coded to V5. We're assuming they all have perfect attendance for the school year, and here's how the calculation falls. So for all your V1 students, you use a contact multiplier of 1 times the eligible days present, and that gives you the calculation for the contact hours. You do the same for V2, changing your contact hour to 2, same for V3, 3, and then V5 and on. Remember, V6 is the maximum that you can receive. Once you've determined what all of the different contact hours are, you add them at the bottom, and you come to 35,208 contact hours. You're going to divide that by the maximum of the 1,080 contact hours, and that gives you your 32.667 CTE FTEs for ABC ISD. Here, then, the calculation is CTE weighted funding, FTEs times your district adjusted allotment. Again, if you have questions on the adjusted allotment, I'll have to get an answer back from you from state funding. It's a really involved formula that's probably on your summary of finance, but we can definitely get you an answer. Times your weighted funding of the 1.35. We assume that this district ABC has 6,600 of an adjusted allotment times the 32.667 eligible CTEs. So their weighted funding times the 1.35 is $291,063. So you can see how your weighted funding for CTE, especially, well, large or small, district or charter, can definitely increase your revenue base for your particular students that are coded for these contact hours. For your to estimate your district's foundation school program CTE allotment, there's a link that's included here. You can go through this and it'll walk you through, and it has a lot of information in regards to the FSP for CTE allotment that's on your summary of finance. I kind of blazed through my PowerPoint really quick because I wanted to open it up for questions. I'm going to put my information, and Yolanda's there. I see people taking pictures, but you guys will have this PowerPoint in a minute. So let's open it up with questions. Any questions?
Okay, so on the V1, 45 to 89 minutes. If you have 45 minutes, you're good to go as kind of as a 1 hour.
Correct. It's an average that you're going to use.
Okay, so when we look at the when we're doing the paid practicum, the average of 1 hour per day. So if we meet 45 minutes, we're good to go.
That's a CTE program question.
We're saying it's good because of the 89. But
Great.
okay.
Yes, because you got 45 to 89.
We talked a lot about FTEs, and one of the things that I do is when I work with schools, and I want you to declare, because you're TEA, so I'm going to run this past
I'm
you.
TEA.
You're TEA. You're the big boss lady there. So if I go and talk to a school and I show them where to pull from their summary of finance, what is their adjusted allotment, and let's just say, on average, it's somewhere, depending on how much money your school is and which category you fall in, you're going to be between 51 and 6,200 for every kid that comes and sets for 4 hours or more a day for 180 days. So in other words, a kid who's a full-time student for the year on regular without the 1.35 multiplier makes about, let's just average out 5,800 for a school district.
Okay.
That means for the year, if these three ladies were students, each one of them, if they were 100% attendance for just showing up, I'd get $5,850 for each one sitting in a seat for the whole year if they were there for 180 days. Is that correct?
Once you've done your adjusted allotment times you've already done the calculation.
Well,
say
we're not even talking CTE yet. What I'm trying to do is, because there's some people that have never seen that school finance, so I want them to understand how it works. I understand it, but what I'm trying to relay is so you can clarify how I explain it to people and make sure I'm doing it right.
Well, being that the section I'm in doesn't necessarily do the summary of finance, that's another section that handles it. It's based on, the weighted funding is based basically on what programs you're offering the student. If you're a regular education student, I don't know what is out there right now, it might be $5,800 that you would receive for that regular ed student. Then whatever weighted funding is on top of that would be an addition if it's CTE, if it's pregnancy related, if it's general education homebound, if it's bilingual, pre-K. Does that answer your question? Or?
Well, for the sake of this argument, I just wanted to get back to the 1.35. So
okay.
if you have 6 students in a class,
okay.
and I'm just using the rate, everybody in here has a different summary of finance essentially. You pull your summary of finance and we could tell you what your seated funding is for the year per one student that shows up full time. And if it was 58, and I'm just using 5,800 because that's just a throw out number. So if you got 5,800 for each kid to sit in a seat, and you had 6 kids in a class, and that class happened to be a CTE, you would take the number of 6 kids divided by 6, and that would give you 1 FTE. And the reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason it works like that is it takes 30 contact hours per week to draw 1 FTE. So if you have 6 kids sitting in the class, that's 6 hours per day times 5 gives you 30 hours. That's 1 FTE. Then you would take that $5,800 and multiply that times 1.35, and if you subtracted the 5,800, it would tell you exactly how much you made by changing that class to a CTE class.
From a regular class.
Yes.
Correct. Do you want to come up here and teach?
No,
You're
I
doing
just want
good.
to clarify. That was more for me.
Oh, your session's later. You're good.
If you
no,
agree,
that's right.
that tells me I've been doing it right.
You're doing it right.
Okay.
No other questions? Do you have any?
No more.
Okay. Well, you can stretch your. If you have any further questions and you don't want to necessarily ask right now, you can email me or you can call me. These are real numbers. They're not just some arbitrary number that we throw out. Yolanda and I, they go to our desk, fortunately, unfortunately, but we do answer. Again, if I do not know the answer, I'll get the answer back to you. So thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your conference.